I was halfway home from my night shift when I saw the flashing lights in my rearview. I pulled over calmly. It wasn't the first time I'd been stopped without reason, and it probably wouldn't be the last. My name's Keisha Monroe. I'm a corporate compliance officer, single mom, and no stranger to staying calm under pressure. But this stop felt different. The officer approached slow, his hand already near his holster. His name tag read D. Harvell. License and registration, he said, barely looking at me. I handed them over, polite as ever. Step out of the vehicle. Why? Did I do something wrong? You match a description, he said flatly. I wanted to ask what description, but I'd played this game before. I got out. He immediately moved past me, went straight to the passenger side, and reached under the seat. Then he pulled out a small Ziploc bag. White powder inside. What the hell is that? I asked. He looked at me, his face stone cold. You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance. That's when my body went cold. But I didn't panic. I took a deep breath. He thought I'd break. He had no idea who I really was. Next part. Part 2 ChatGPT, Part 2 at the precinct, they put me through the usual process, mugshots, fingerprints, the whole routine. I kept quiet. No arguing. No begging. That's what they expected. But my mind was already moving 10 steps ahead. You see, part of my job in corporate compliance involves dissecting systems, finding weak links, uncovering policy violations, and documenting everything. I wasn't just good at it. I was one of the best. They let me make one phone call. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call family. I called Angela Price. Angela wasn't just a friend, she was an internal affairs investigator. We'd met during a whistleblower audit at a shipping firm 2 years earlier, and she owed me a favor. A big one. When she answered, I said one thing, D. Harvell. Narcotics plant. It's happening again. She went silent for a moment. Then, say nothing else. I'm on my way. Meanwhile, Officer Harvell strutted past the holding cell with that same smug look. Could have been worse, he muttered. Might have found a gun too. He was trying to provoke me. But I didn't bite. Because what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my dashcam was still recording. Not just the traffic stop, but every minute, from ignition to arrest. And it uploaded automatically to cloud storage. I smiled. Let them play their game. They had no idea they just lit a match next to a fuse. Next part. Part 3 ChatGPT, Part 3. By the time Angela arrived at the precinct, I was already being prepped for transfer to county. Harvell was outside the intake room, talking in low tones with another officer, Sergeant Loomis. I could tell by their body language this wasn't their first time. Angela walked in flashing her badge, sharp blazer over jeans, hair pulled back, eyes scanning everything. I need to speak to the detainee, she said, stone-cold professional. Now. The officer at the desk hesitated. She's all ready, I said now. Within minutes, we were alone in a small side room. Angela didn't waste time. Tell me everything. I laid it out, the stop, the search, the planted bag. Then I said the words that flipped her expression, my dashcam uploads automatically to a private server. I already pulled the footage. Harvell walks into frame with the bag in his hand before he even opens my car. Angela's eyes narrowed. You have it backed up. Triple backed. Time-stamped. Synced with GPS and audio. She exhaled. You just handed me a bomb. No, I said. I'm handing you the first domino. Angela stood up. Give me access to the footage. I'll take it from here. I looked her dead in the eye. Angela, I don't want one cop suspended. I want the whole rotten setup gone. Everyone who looked the other way. Everyone who signed off. Angela nodded. Then we do this by the book, but fast. And just like that, the fuse was lit. Outside the interview room, Harvell still looked smug. He didn't know that everything he thought he'd buried was about to explode in front of the entire city. Next part. Part 4 ChatGPT. Part 4 Angela moved like a ghost through the department, quiet, unnoticed, but deadly precise. Within an hour, she had the footage downloaded, verified, and sent to a secure server inside Internal Affairs. But it wasn't just the dashcam footage. I had something else. Months ago, I'd begun compiling open data reports on local arrests, particularly odd spikes in drug possession charges with similar patterns, routine stops, no prior records, charges mysteriously dropped a week later, evidence mysteriously misplaced. I showed Angela a spreadsheet I'd built, names, badge numbers, patterns. Harvell's name showed up again. So did Sergeant Loomis. So did 2 others. Angela leaned back and whispered, "You've been sitting on a corruption map." I shook my head. No. I've been waiting for a trigger. She stared at the document, then muttered, "This is enough to open a task force." While she began putting together a formal internal request, she did one more thing, something quiet, but lethal. She made an anonymous leak. Within hours, a reporter from the Sentinel had a copy of my footage. By midnight, it was online. Officer caught on dashcam appearing to plant drugs during routine stop. Sources say department may face wider scrutiny. The city woke up furious. I was released at 6:03 a.m., no charges filed. No apology, either. Harvell wasn't at the station when I walked out. But Loomis was. And the look on his face said everything. He knew. The foundation under their feet had started to crack. Next part. Part 5 ChatGPT. Part 5 By mid-morning, the news cycle had exploded. The video had been played on 3 local stations, picked up by 2 national blogs, and clipped into viral reels on social media. Commentators debated whether it was just one bad apple or something deeper. But people in the city, especially those who'd lived through similar stories, weren't fooled. They knew. This wasn't new. It was just finally caught. Angela called me from a blocked number. Internal Affairs just got greenlit for a formal audit. The chief has no choice but to authorize a full review. Good, I said. Then it's time I show my face. I went to the Sentinel and sat down for an on-record interview. I didn't say anything outrageous, I didn't have to. I spoke calmly, clearly. About trust. About abuse of power. About the right to drive home from work without being hunted by people in uniforms. Then I dropped the spreadsheet. This isn't just about me. Look at the arrest patterns. Look at who signs the reports. Follow the chain. This is a system, not a mistake. The journalist blinked as she scrolled. You did all this yourself? I had help, I said. They just didn't know they were helping. Later that afternoon, Angela texted me a single sentence, task force approved. Investigators inbound. Harvell suspended pending inquiry. But I knew that wasn't enough. Not yet. This thing didn't end with him. It ended when the whole machine collapsed. Next part. Part 6 ChatGPT. Part 6 The next few days were chaos, for them. The task force moved fast. Internal Affairs seized bodycam archives, booking logs, and internal emails. Desks were cleared. Phones were confiscated. Officers were pulled from the floor mid-shift. Harvell had gone silent. No press. No statements. Just vanished. But Angela kept me updated. We've got text messages, she said one night. Between Harvell and Loomis. They joked about who'd be the next lucky winner. My stomach turned. They targeted people, Keisha. Young. Alone. Clean records. They didn't just plant drugs, they ran it like a numbers game. Harvell even bragged about clearing quotas. I said nothing for a long moment. Then, what about the prosecutors? The judges who kept approving these charges? Angela hesitated. Some are cooperating. Others are lawyering up. That same night, the Sentinel dropped a bombshell second piece. Pattern of misconduct, over 200 cases tied to suspended officers now under review. City Hall was in full panic. The mayor held a press conference, stammering through promises of accountability and reform. But people didn't want words. They wanted names. And then, we got the name that changed everything. Angela called me, breathless. They found a signed memo. Loomis got warnings about Harvell 2 years ago, from another officer. And? I asked. He buried it. Marked it as inconclusive. That's obstruction. I smiled for the first time in days. They didn't just have a bad cop. They had a conspiracy. And it was finally unraveling. Next part. Part 7 ChatGPT, Part 7 The dominoes began to fall, fast. Sergeant Loomis was placed on administrative leave, but the headlines didn't wait for due process. Supervisors ignored warnings about Officer Harvell, internal memo leaked, whistleblower's complaint was buried, now it's evidence. Angela confirmed what I'd suspected, at least 4 officers were now under formal investigation, and 2 assistant prosecutors had quietly resigned. But the real blow came from an unlikely place, Harvell's own partner. Officer Denise Carter. Angela called me late that night. Carter just flipped. What? She came in voluntarily. Said she couldn't live with it anymore. Said Harvell planted drugs more than a dozen times, and she was told to keep quiet or risk reassignment to night patrol in the worst part of the city. My heart was pounding. She named Loomis. And the lieutenant. And Keisha, she mentioned evidence disposal logs. Said they faked them. Angela's voice turned serious. We're talking criminal charges now. Not just internal discipline. Obstruction. Falsifying reports. Illegal searches. Perjury. Then she paused. Keisha, without your dashcam, none of this would have cracked open. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because the department issued a statement that night, carefully worded, full of legal hedging. No admissions. No apologies. They were still in defense mode. Still trying to contain the fire. So I lit another match. Next part. Part 8 ChatGPT, Part 8 The morning after Carter came forward, I stood on the courthouse steps with a mic clipped to my jacket and a folder in my hand. Not a protest. Not a press stunt. A press conference. Beside me stood attorney Malcolm Reese, civil rights litigator and former federal prosecutor. He wasn't just representing me. He was filing a class-action civil suit on behalf of over 40 people falsely arrested in cases linked to Harvell, Loomis, and their network. We are here today, Malcolm began, because silence allowed this to continue. Because power unchecked is power abused. But today, that changes. He held up the folder. We have the records. We have the footage. And we have the whistleblowers. I stepped forward, looked directly at the reporters. I didn't go looking for a fight, I said. I was driving home from work. But when they dragged me into the system, they didn't know who they were dealing with. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. Reporters swarmed with questions, but I only gave one answer that mattered: you don't fix a broken machine by polishing the surface. You rebuild it from the inside out. That evening, Carter's recorded deposition was leaked, verified, timestamped, and damning. She described exact dates. She named names. She described how drugs were taken from prior evidence bins and reused in new arrests. That clip went viral overnight. Public pressure exploded. By dawn, the police chief had no choice. He called a press briefing. Sweating, pale, and visibly shaken. The department will cooperate fully. All personnel implicated will be suspended without pay pending review. But it was too late for damage control. Because the story had grown bigger than the department. It had become a symbol. Next part. Part 9 ChatGPT, Part 9 Within a week, the City Council launched an emergency oversight committee. State lawmakers called for a full audit of every arrest made by the implicated officers over the last 5 years. The Department of Justice got involved. Harvell was arrested, formally. Charged with multiple counts, falsifying police reports, tampering with evidence, and civil rights violations. Loomis followed 2 days later. The courtroom was packed when they were brought in for arraignment. I was there. Front row. Calm. Focused. Angela sat beside me in plain clothes, arms crossed. She whispered, "They're offering deals to anyone who talks. It's a full unravel now." And it wasn't just the cops. An assistant DA was subpoenaed for approving charges with no supporting lab results. A property clerk admitted to misplacing evidence for years. The whole network was collapsing, because it had never been built to last. It had been built to hide. I received messages from people I didn't know, some who'd done jail time for arrests tied to Harvell, others who'd never spoken publicly about what happened to them. Now, they had a voice. And I made sure they had a platform. With Malcolm's help, we created a legal defense fund. Donations poured in. We partnered with journalists and civil groups to release a report titled, "The Pattern, How Routine Power Becomes Weaponized." It didn't read like a manifesto. It read like a blueprint, for change. Still, not everyone was happy. I got warnings, threats, even a few anonymous calls telling me to let it go. But I didn't start this. They did. I just refused to back down. Next part. Part 10 Final ChatGPT, Part 10, Final 3 months later, the courtroom was standing room only. Not for a trial, but for a public hearing. The city was required to show the results of the full investigation. And for once, the truth wasn't hidden behind legal jargon or vague statements. It was printed. Read aloud. Broadcast live. Over 60 officers reviewed. 19 suspended. 12 fired. 7 charged. 4 indicted. And 1 department completely restructured. Harvell pled guilty. So did Loomis. Their plea deals included mandatory cooperation with federal investigators, and testimony against others still under review. But that day wasn't about them. It was about everyone who came forward. The people who'd been silenced. The ones who'd lived in fear. The ones who finally saw accountability with their own eyes. I was called up last. The room got quiet. I didn't ask to be here, I said into the mic. I never wanted headlines. I just wanted to get home after work. I looked out at the rows of people. But when you know how to fight a system, when you have the truth, and the tools to show it, you don't just walk away. You make sure it never happens again. Applause followed me out the door. Later that night, I stood alone in my apartment, watching the final segment air on national TV. The headline read, "Whistleblower Turns the Tables, How One Woman's Calm Exposed a Citywide Cover-Up," and I finally exhaled. They framed the wrong woman. And they'll never forget what happened when they did.